We're going to look at how to carve a roast joint, and this is just a small chicken that I have here, but the principle, generally speaking, is the same. Now if I was trying to carve this bird, one, we're going to use a fork. A carving fork has nice long prongs that allows you to hold it. I'm just going to cut down where the legs are and the wings are, just so I know I have a clear area. And then it's going to be a case, you'll have a sharp knife. There we go. Your knife, this is a cold, as I said, chicken. Hot chicken will carve more easily. There you go. More juices. So I'm literally just holding the chicken in place, and then I'm using my carving knife, and generally speaking the thickness of slice that you want will depend on what you're eating, how you're eating. If it's a meal at the table and guests, you're most probably going to go thinner and more slices, and you may well prefer thicker. So you are in control of that knife. But as you go through, make sure you're feeling with the knife, because that'll let you know should you hit. And the chicken in a cavity is actually in a curved shape, so I know these pieces are going to get slightly shorter as I go. And when I'm putting my fork in, I'm actually coming down to that cavity to allow me to hold it securely. So carving isn't something you should run away from, and it just takes practice. And as you get closer to the edge, you would be able to just stop at that point, and it will ease off. Once you have got your meat sliced, at that point you could turn it into cubes if you wanted to put it into a chicken salad or something like that. If you wanted to make pulled chicken or pulled pork, it is much easier to do that when the meat is still hot. So I'm just going to show you roughly how you pull. So here we go. You literally will take the fibers of the chicken and pull it down, and that's going to give you pulled chicken, or you're pulled if you're using pork, whatever you're doing. So that's the look you're looking for. That's a bone, so pulling is always good. But that does actually work a lot more easily when the meat is still warm. The video today is on chopping and carving meat. I'm going to start with some steak. As you can see, it's red meat, and I'm on my red board. That is on top of my wooden board, which helps give me a good solid surface. In actual fact, my wooden board is also on some grips, so the board can't move. Another way to do that is to put a tea towel down. Sometimes these granite surfaces can give you too much wiggle room. You don't want that when you're using a sharp knife and cutting meat. If I was making beef stroganoff or a stir fry, the chances are I'd want long and thin. So I am literally going to cut through and give us almost the equivalent of your julienne in vegetables, long and thin. This means this is going to cook very quickly. I'd be able to cook that piece of steak within a minute on a hot stove. So we can do our meat long and thin. Obviously, I don't need to cut it at all. We could actually cook this steak. Because it's quite thin, we're going to be turning it so we don't burn one side, but depending on how well you want it cooked, this steak would not take long to cook at all. We are talking minutes again. The thicker the steak, then the longer it's going to take. I could also cube my meat. So I'm just going to make it easier for me, move this out of the way. And now I'm just going to slice across the way. Notice my fingers always go to the down position just in case I catch my finger. And this way I now have the meat all diced and quite small. In the vegetable chopping video, I mentioned that we tend to chop our vegetables to the size of our meat. It just keeps a consistency in what we're doing. So if you were dicing your vegetables, then you're going to dice your meat as well. If I was doing a casserole and I wanted to cook it long and slow, I would not make my meat so small because it would disintegrate. So at that point, I'm actually going to cut my meat into much bigger chunks. I have to say, if I was doing a casserole, I'd make sure my meat was thicker than this anyway to start with. So this thickness of meat isn't going to be great for a long and slow cooking session. But the bigger the size of the meat, the longer it's going to take to cook, so the easier it is for you to use it in dishes if you're going to be out all day or slow cooking and things like that. So these are some ways that we can chop raw meat.